from that just last week, a site has been decided upon potentially for a new temple in Dar es Salaam. So ISKCON Dar es Salaam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And I think this will be a step closer to Srila Prabhupada's desire for preaching in East Africa and Africa in general. Obviously, Mauritius has been a bastion of Krishna consciousness since Srila Prabhupada has left. Nairobi, Srila Prabhupada personally established, and we know that Kisumu, Mombasa, and obviously ISKCON Eldoret is now blazing a trail. But we're hoping that this will open up a new dimension to Srila Prabhupada's mission entering into Tanzania for the benefit of all the residents of Tanzania and the Swahili belt more generally. And I hope I'm going to try and endeavor. I've already reached out to Umapati Prabhu, and I've been speaking to the management over in ISKCON Dar es Salaam, that we can start to expand this Sangha. I know I've talked about it, expand this Sangha and consider ourselves one East African family. Mauritius is definitely included in that, and try and get more and more participants into this Sangha. And so we can all support each other, our respective temples, and obviously our respective spiritual lives. So that's some wonderful news. Oh, and I should also mention that actually the patrons of this temple at the moment, obviously Vijay Gopinath Prabhu, Chaya Mataji, and also Parikshit Prabhu in Dar have been stalwarts of that community, but also Shriman Arun Bhai Lodia and Srimati Divya Ben Lodia will be providing the funds and sponsoring the acquisition of the land. They are the grandparents of my daughter and the parents of my wife. So all glories to their service and commitment. I've put it here and it's recorded, so no backing out. It's going out there into the digital ether, so no backing out. Not that they ever would. They are incredibly generous and have always been supporters of Srila Prabhupada's movement. So yes, I look forward to the family of devotees in East Africa growing, and hopefully I can be some service to you all in that respect. So we'll start off with, I'm going to quickly go through Jaya Radha Madhav, and just so we can start doing this like a proper class, and hopefully it can evolve into more of a class in future. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivirajikacharya Stotra Satashi Shriman Srila Bhai Sharanarvindam Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Samaveta Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari. Om Jnana Tirmahannasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahaguna Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Chetam Surto Pangor Mama Mandir Mater Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madanamo Hano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadaha Shrimad Ratnagara Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prishtalibi Sevyamanosmarami Shriman Rasa Rasa Rambi Vamsi Vatatata Stitaha Karshan Venu Svaner Gopi Gopinata Shriyestunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Mukam karoti vachalam Pangum yatlangayate girim Yat kripatamaham bande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So today, as we can see up on screen, we're reading from Amala Puran Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 4th chapter, verse 18. The canto is entitled The Status Quo, and the chapter is chapter 4. Vidura approaches Maitreya Rishi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chevam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraet Nashta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloker Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So the verse which we have here is very convenient. Jnanam param swatma raha prakasham provacha kasmai bhagavan samagram apikshmanam na grahannaya bhartar vadanjasa yad vrijanam tarema sorry, let me say that last line again. Vadanjasa yad vrijanam tarema Jnanam param svatma raha prakasham provacha kasmai bhagavan samagram apikshmamna grahanaya bhartar vadanjasa yad vrijam tarema. Translation: My Lord, kindly explain to us, if you think us competent to receive it, that transcendental knowledge which gives enlightenment about yourself and which you explained before to Brahmaji. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Abhay Charanarvindam Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A pure devotee like Uddhav has no material afflictions because he engages constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. A devotee feels afflicted without the association of the Lord. Constant remembrance of the Lord's activities keeps the devotee alive, and therefore Uddhav requested that the Lord please enlighten him with the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, as previously instructed to Brahmaji. So again, translation: My Lord, kindly explain to us, if you think us competent to receive it, that transcendental knowledge which gives us enlightenment about yourself and which you explained before to Brahmaji. So this is a very interesting verse, short purport, and I think I start off every class by saying it's a very interesting verse, and I guess that's the unlimited dimensions to the Srimad Bhagavatam. and also to the Bhaktivedanta purports, which Srila Prabhupada said were his ecstasies and which were being directly narrated to him by Krishna himself. I think it'd be interesting to know how many of you have watched the series following Srila Prabhupada. I would recommend all of you, where possible, including my daughter, who's now appeared on, to take the time to watch following Srila Prabhupada, and where devotees have talked about their encounters with their spiritual master, particularly where devotees reflect on the instructions that they've received from their spiritual master. And you'll see that even though these incidents, Hare Krishna. Can we put it back on, Draupadi Maharani? Can we put it back on mute? Thank you. We'll see that even when these incidents may have only taken a few seconds, a few moments, they end up becoming the fulcrum for somebody's entire life. I'll give you an example. Many of you may or may not know Ayendra Prabhu. Ayendra Prabhu was famous that from 1986 to 2010, he kept a 24-hour kirtan in Vrindavan going continuously. Actually, this was a request of Srila Prabhupada in the 1970s, that there be, for the pleasure of Krishna Balaram, 24 hours of kirtan going on continuously in Vrindavan. And for some years in the late 70s or early 80s, this trend had been lost, and Ayendra Prabhu made it his mission to re-establish. And his CDs and his kirtans and his classes are kind of inspiration for devotees, many of whom never physically met him. And for Ayendra Prabhu, actually, he didn't have very much personal association with Srila Prabhupada. In fact, he had barely any. He was based in the Baltimore temple. Baltimore is in the northeastern coast. It's near Washington, D.C., on the eastern coast of the United States. And he was doing a lot of book distribution. He was doing some deity service as well, but he especially liked kirtan. And he was leading an ecstatic kirtan in the temple room. He may have just been by himself. And Srila Prabhupada walked in and he saw Ayendra Prabhu playing. And Srila Prabhupada looked at Ayendra and he said a three-letter word, Jai. Jai. Saw him play, and then he walked on. And Ayendra Prabhu was so moved by this one interaction of three letters that it dictated and perfected the course of his life. He treasured that one interaction and that one instruction from the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to its fullest extent, and it led to his ultimate perfection. So when we read this verse and we see that Uddhav is actually speaking here to Krishna, and he's asking Krishna, my Lord, kindly explain to us. And actually later on in this chapter, he refers to the Lord, not only as the Supreme Lord, but also as his spiritual master. And we see here, Uddhav is saying, my Lord, kindly explain to us, if you think us competent to receive it, that transcendental knowledge which gives enlightenment about yourself and which you explained before to Brahmaji. So Uddhav here is asking for the Jai moment of Ayendra Prabhu and Srila Prabhupada. He is asking for that instruction that is going to perfect his life, right? So we should realize that these interactions between the Lord and the devotee, and between the Lord's representative, the Guru, and the devotee, this can be in many different formats. This can be through reading the books of the spiritual master. This can be through hearing the classes of the spiritual master. This can be through having a direct interaction with the spiritual master. All of them are one of the same. Revelation from within the heart from the spiritual master. But we should see that in the way that Uddhav meditates on this, as if it is the defining feature of his life, in the way that disciples meditate on it, as if it is the defining feature of their life, we must also meditate and appreciate and elevate these interactions so they can become the fulcrum around which we organize all of our life. So there's 3 points to this translation which I want to focus on. The first part is asking the right question. So here we see in this translation, Uddhava is saying, kindly explain to us about that transcendental knowledge which gives enlightenment about yourself. So this is the right question. We're not asking, hey, Krishna, what are the numbers for the lottery, right? Give me the lottery number for next week so, I can get that winning ticket. We're not saying, hey, Krishna, I want to build up my body so I'm, the next kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I want to be famous for having a fantastic body, Hey, Krishna, give me that intelligence so I can go and I can excel in any tech company and I can become, a master strategist. It's the right question. The right question. Perfect questions, perfect answers. You see, and we'll go into the detail of it, but this is the right question. How do I understand you, who is the cause of all causes? Because if I can understand you, then automatically understanding of everything else will come. Because all of these are just different features and opulences of yours. But the right question is to understand the origin. Then I can understand all of the details by extension. So that's the first point I want to focus on, asking the right question. The second point of this verse is asking from the right source. You see, okay, many people are interested in God, but not many people are going to an authorized source to understand God. People are very keen to give their own opinion. I think God is this, and in my opinion, God is that. And, I believe God is this. Okay, that's great. But better that if we have the opportunity, we speak to God himself. We speak to Krishna himself. We speak to the Ishvara Paramam himself. And in the absence of the Ishvara Paramam, in the absence of the king, in the absence of the leader, if we can speak to one of the king or the leader's representatives, authorized representatives, i.e. the guru, that is better than us speculating on the topic of God. So if you can speak to God himself, or if you can speak to God's authorized representative, this is better than speculating. So we've got the right question and we're seeking it from the answer to that question from the right source. And then the final point of this verse that I want to analyze is that Uddhav here is not just talking about going to the right source, but also his ability to receive that knowledge. If you think us competent to receive it, Uddhav is saying this, if you think us competent to receive it. The world is obsessed with pointing out bogus guru and this leader did this and this pastor did that and this minister did this. Fine. But have we ever thought about bogus followers? Have we ever thought about our qualification to receive it? It is a two-way exchange. And so we'll get into that. So that's why this verse is very interesting. It's the right question. It's going to the right source. And Uddhav is showing his exemplary ability to receive the information from the right source, his qualification. So going on to the first part, asking the right question, giving enlightenment about yourself. Let me understand who is God. If I have a window into who is God, I might have a window into my connection with God, right? They say there's two births in this life, Dvija. Srila Prabhupada, and the Sanskrit term for your second birth is Dvija. You become born twice. There's a famous kind of not aphorism, but it's an epithet. People say there are two important days in your life: the day you are born and the day you find out why. When you take this life, that's important. You've come into existence. You've got your body. You can grow into it. But then after you've been gifted this body, the day you find out what the purpose of this body is becomes equally, if not more important. So you have a physical birth, and then you have your spiritual birth, the birth of your consciousness being opened. And that is known as initiation. That means you are a Dvija, a twice born, one who has taken a physical human birth, but then has taken a spiritual birth. His consciousness has taken birth. His deep and committed inquiry into the purpose of his life has taken birth. And that is what Uddhav is seeking here. He's seeking to understand his purpose by understanding more about the Lord. and by extension, his relationship with the Lord. So, today, unfortunately, in this day and age, asking why and what the purpose of our life is really a secondary consideration. If we're lucky, or if a community is lucky, people have some sense of connection with God. Maybe they go to go to a place of worship on a Friday or a Sunday or on a special occasion, and they say, yes, I have faith in God. But in terms of developing and committing themselves to a deep understanding of God, that's often lacking. That's often seen as, an unnecessary pursuit. People think, as long as I believe in God, God is great, that's enough. But actually, and then what's been replaced with that is that the real necessity in life is money. Money. How to get money. Even when people go to university, right? When I was at university, I used to ask people, why is it that they studied law? I read law in London. And often people who I used to be in competitive rowing. I don't know if people know about rowing. Crew is where you get these boats and there's 8 of you in there and you row and you compete. I don't know whether it happens much in Africa, but certainly in Europe and North America, it's Australia as well. It's a very competitive thing. So I was asking some of my boatmates, there were 3 of us who were all doing law. They were in the year above me. And I was like, well, why did you guys study law? And the answer from both of them is that they wanted a Ferrari before 30. So in those days, legal profession was very well paying. And they were like, yeah, I've got to get my Ferrari before 30. And, that's why I'm doing it. I'm going to get into this law firm, do this and, make that money. So I was like, okay. And then I remember I lived with a lot of medics and dentists. King's College London is very famous for its medical school, and its dental school is the best in Europe. So I'd also ask them, say, why medicine? And they were like, man, my friend drives. He's 28. He drives a Porsche Boxster. He's got a apartment in Knightsbridge, and I want some of that action. So knowledge and understanding, even at the most prestigious quote unquote universities, is now directly coupled with money. Nothing more, nothing less. And whether it's conscious or unconscious, people think that by getting that cash, this will solve all of your problems. It'll give you status, it'll give you security, it will give you facility, it will give you enjoyment. Now, then you've got another school of thought who see all of this, and you see dog eat dog, rat race. And then they look at money and they say, there's another expression, money is the root of all evil. And they say, oh God, money just, it can even make families cannibalize on each other. There's been cases in London where people have, there was this old lady who was walking down the street and she was robbed and killed by this teenager for £1, so he could go and get, and he killed a woman over £1. And people will look at this and say, money is the root of all evil. And so real understanding is how to get away from money. But actually, what we realize in the Vedas, and by asking the right questions and understanding God in your existence, you come to the point of realizing that money and material benefit is a tool. It is a tool. And just like any tool, take a knife. You just heard from Dennis Prabhu, Mugo Prabhu, that he is saying that, potentially going into surgery. You take a knife, right? A knife is a tool. In the hands of a surgeon, that tool can give life. In the hands of a chef, that tool can sustain life. In the hands of a murderer, that tool, same tool, can take life. And in the hands of a child who is untrained, that tool can take your own life. Same tool, but it's the consciousness of the person wielding it that makes a difference as to the effect of that tool. So I am not denying that money is a useful tool. And in the world that we live in, money is a very useful tool. I would say that there's probably too much of an emphasis, but that's a separate discussion. What is important, however, is that that tool, to be able to support your physical body, needs to be accompanied by the understanding of your mental and your spiritual dimensions. If you do not know where you are ultimately going and what you are ultimately trying to achieve, right? The tool that you have will be underutilized. If I go out to the shop and just try and buy lots and lots and lots of knives, but I have no clue what I'm going to do with the knives, but I've heard that knives are useful. Knives are useful. But I've got no expertise in using this knife and putting it for something positive or putting it for something that destroys me. What is the value? Even if, you know, some Japanese knives, they've got these super sharp knives, they can cost thousands of dollars. Oh, yes, I need many knives. Knives are useful. Let me collect knives. Let me learn how I can collect more and more knives. But I don't know what I'm going to do with that knife and how I'm going to use that knife ultimately. What is the value? What is the value of this understanding and education? Equally, if I don't realize that in myself, I have a physical body, I have a mental state, the mind, intelligence, of force, ego, and I also am the soul eternally. And the decisions I'm making in this life are ultimately to benefit the physical body, to uplift the psychological body, but ultimately to give me connection with my eternal position in relation to God. You know, this body is only here for 90 years, but my soul is eternal. If I am searching after money, but I don't have a context of how I'm going to apply it to benefit all those three dimensions, my physical, my psychological, and my spiritual, then that money may be a tool or it may be a hindrance. Because I may do things, you know, you see people, they get wealth, they say, I give my health to get wealth. And I give my wealth to get back my health. You know, when they get their money, they work so hard and they're stressed. And they get that money and they're drinking alcohol and they're eating every creature, every animal under the sun, filled with all sorts of different chemicals. And, you know, they're taking drugs and staying up all night and sleeping all day. And you think they've got all of this facility, but are they benefiting themselves physically? Srila Prabhupada even mentions in the 18th chapter, people in the divine and, oh, maybe it's in the 16th chapter, 16th and 18th, actually, both, divine and demonic natures. Srila Prabhupada talks about how people in the pursuit of enjoyment, material enjoyment, they're constantly stressed out. They're constantly envious. I buy a Ferrari and then my neighbor buys a Lamborghini and how could he outdo me? You know, people are in so much anxiety. So they have this facility, but they're not asking that question. They're not asking the question which Uddhav, and Uddhav is a prince. Uddhav is a wealthy prince. He's well, and we'll find out later on that this wealthy prince who lived in an opulence that, you know, the richest men on this planet, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and whoever else, Dangote from Nigeria, they couldn't even dream of the luxury, the facility. You know, he had airplanes, the ability to fly, and, you know, beautiful palaces and floating gardens and everything. And he's leaving all of this. Why? Because he realized this facility alone is not going to give him what is satisfying to the heart. He understands what is satisfying to the heart can only be found by requesting it from the Lord or the Lord's representative, because they know what the true purpose of life is. And once you understand that true purpose in life, what is it that will give my heart that full contentment in a way that a Ferrari will not, in a way that a beautiful big house will not? You know, as soon as you live in a big house for a year, it becomes like any other house. It becomes like any other bed. As soon as you've had a Ferrari for a year, you think every time you get into it, you feel hooray. If you're on a desert island and you're in a Ferrari or you're on a 2-week bike, would it make any difference? You know, you're just trying to impress some other people. You're not transforming what's going on in your heart. You know, trying to make other people jealous versus feeling that deep connection with the Lord. They're fundamentally different. They're different. And Uddhav has realized this. So he's saying, give me that transcendental knowledge and enlightenment about yourself as you have explained before to Brahmaji. Because he knows nothing else. All of his palaces are not going to give him that eternal satisfaction. They're all duality. We hanker after something material, and then we lament. We lament after it. You know, we buy the most expensive car, it gets scratched. We buy the most expensive car, somebody else buys it. We buy the most expensive car, they release a new one. Hankering after it. We're anxious to get it. And once we've got it, we're lamenting. So there's no real enjoyment there. The real enjoyment is that eternal enjoyment. The body is temporary. The enjoyment of the body will remain temporary. The psychology endures for a bit longer. So the, you know, pleasing the mind will endure for a bit longer, but it won't be eternal. You know, you can have a perfect life in this world, beautiful family, beautiful children, you know, affluent, this and that, and you can feel in your mind content. But you know what will happen? That situation, even if you've curated for 100 years, will still be taken away from you. It's still temporary. It may not be a momentary pleasure, like pleasure of the senses and the physical body, but pleasure of the mind is still temporary. It still only endures as long as your life, 90 years, 100 years. So that identity which endures for eternity, the spiritual identity, when we start to tap into that spiritual identity, when we understand the happiness of that spiritual identity enduring, that's when we can have that eternal happiness. And only by understanding that eternal plane can we get that enduring happiness. What is it? Atmarama. There's another verse that I was thinking of, but Atmarama. We are pleasure seeking. We can seek the temporary pleasure of the body, the slightly more enduring pleasure of the psychology, or the eternal pleasure of the soul. We must be like Uddhav. We speak to the Lord or the Lord's representative, and then we ask that question, how do I get that enduring happiness? So, you know, not many people are asking this question, Uddhav. Many people are asking, they don't want to hear about this. They want to go to a concert. They have queues lining up, hundreds of thousands of people going to Taylor Swift. Do people know Taylor Swift? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Big pop star. Or, you know, the Champions League football. Well, you have queues of people, 80,000, 100,000. If you say to people, I'm going to give you eternal happiness, they'll say, but can I listen when the cricket's not on? Or when the football isn't playing? You know, if you gave them a ticket, this is the ticket to the temple. And here you can learn eternal happiness, but this is the ticket for the World Cup final. Which ticket will you want? I will tell you that for the World Cup final, there will be thousands of people willing to spend thousands of pounds. And this one, you may not be able to give away. So unfortunate are we in this age of Kali. But then we must realize how privileged we are in our position, because Srila Prabhupada would say, there are many takers for fake jewelry, but for a real diamond, oh, there are very few. There are very few. So these are the right questions. The fact that we are all here and everyone that is listening, you are asking the right questions for your enduring happiness. But the question is now, are you seeking the answer for that question of who is God? Who am I? What is my purpose? Are you seeking the answers for that question from the right source? So, you know, there's two scenarios. There's many scenarios, but there's two scenarios that generally people fall into. Number one, they get into the Dr. Frog scenario. Is everyone familiar with the concept of Dr. Frog? So Srila Prabhupada often gave this example of a frog that lived in a well. He was born in that well, he grew up in that well, and he made his home at the side of that well. And one of his friends decided to leave that well and travel. And that frog had only ever experienced the confines of that well. You know, that one well in that one place, in that one country, on that one planet. He'd only experienced a tiny fraction of what there is to experience in life. And his friend had traveled off and had gone to the ocean. And he came back and he spoke to his friend who had stayed at the well. We'll call the frog who stayed at the well, Dr. Frog. And the friend that had gone to the ocean said, "You will not believe what I have seen. I have seen a body of water that is so vast, you can't see the other side of it." And the Dr. Frog is looking at him and he said, "Is it 5 times the size of this well?" He said, "No, no, no." The friend said, "No, no, 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 no. You cannot fathom. From one side to the other side, you cannot see the extent. From the front to the back, you cannot see the extent. It just carries." He said, "Is it 10 times the size of this well?" He said, "No, you can't understand. This is so vast that there are even waves, and there are huge creatures that live in there, and then they eat even bigger creatures, and it's so deep that you cannot even see the bottom." And he said, "So 100 times this well?" So you see the conundrum. Dr. Frog is trying to use his tiny reference, his tiny empirical knowledge to understand something which is beyond his ability to fathom. So if we with our tiny range of experience. Even material scientists say that we can't even estimate the limit of this universe. What to speak of if there is anything beyond this universe? And that too, in time. We can only experience based on the time period that we've lived in. But we don't know what's happened in detail 10,000 or 100,000. Can we speculate based on what we see here, what has happened before, or what will happen afterwards, what has happened in other places? No. Empirical reference is called ascending knowledge. I try and work everything out for myself. How can I do that based on my reference point? I don't know what I don't know. A mole, I always give this example, a mole. Does everyone know what a mole is? A mole is a creature, little mammal that lives under the ground. But a mole is very good at digging, has great sense of smell, great sense of hear, but a mole is practically blind because it lives underground. If you said to a mole, oh, look at that beautiful sun, look at that beautiful sunrise and that beautiful sunset. A mole doesn't have the faculties to be able to empathize with what you're talking about. Based on his experience, what does he know about sunrise? He can't even see. So there may be a whole realm of experience. How do we know that there is a whole realm of experience beyond what is immediately discernible with our own senses? It's a very important question. How much can we understand about the universe based on what we see? So therefore, an intelligent man will go to somebody who has had that experience. Of course, that doesn't mean you just blindly accept. But if you're going to learn a topic, let's say chemistry or physics or biology or whatever it may be, first of all, you read the textbooks and then you've got a reference point. And based on that, then you can make an inquiry and say, oh, challenge this, challenge that, and then maybe you can progress beyond that. But you always have a descending knowledge. You take it from an authority, and then you question, you examine, and maybe you can progress beyond it. So in the same way that we do with any mundane subject, chemistry, physics, whatever else, with spiritual knowledge, we should go to an authority. You know, you don't go and start doing your degree and say, I'm going to do this degree, but I'm also going to write the textbook. I'm going to research everything and write. No, it's not possible. It's not possible. It's not practical. But what then to speak of spiritual knowledge? So we have to go to the authority. So we can't do it ourselves. But then we must ascertain who is the authority. You know, let's take university. Before anyone can come to become a teacher at a university, what is the first thing that they are asked? Before you can give knowledge, they're asked, where did you receive knowledge? Where did you study? What is your qualification to teach? Before you can consider yourself a teacher, we need to examine your credentials as a pupil. You can't become a professor. So in the same way, if someone is going to give spiritual knowledge, understanding to this question about God and God's represented in the purpose of life, we must say, first of all, who have you learned from? Oh, well, I just, woke up one day and thought, I'm going to start teaching everyone about God. Don't give me that. You have no credentials. And that's why it's in any university institution, if you are going to teach there, where did you study? In any spiritual institution, what are your credentials? Who did you study from? So this is given in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 2nd verse. Evam paramparam praptam imam rajashayo vidu sakala neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. Bhagavad Gita 4:2. And the translation of this is the supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession. And the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. And then Krishna reestablishes it. So Krishna is saying, Evam paramparam praptam, the science of understanding God is received through the chain of disciplic succession. Professor to student, guru, disciple. The disciple, initial disciple learns from God. He then becomes a guru and he passes it on to the next disciple, who then becomes the next guru, pass it on to the next disciple. There is no, hello, come to me, I'm the greatest scientist, or I'm the greatest philosopher, I'm the greatest prophet. No. If you have not learned from God or representative of God, you are not in a position to be able to talk. We respect you. We invite you to come and have a discussion, but we are not going to take you as an authority. So Krishna even says in the Mundaka Upanishad, Brahma Devanam Pratmana. Brahma Devanam Pratmana. Brahma appeared as the first created being. And he received the information from the Supreme Lord. And so if you open up the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, you'll see a disciplic succession. All of the chains, starting from Krishna, going to Brahma, then going to Narad, then going to Vyas, and then going to Madhvacharya, and it comes all the way down to the current time. We see how that initial knowledge is given to Brahma and then makes its way down. So we've got the right question, and then we've got the right understanding. And in fact, we should understand that there are 4 initial schools, 4 original schools within the Vedic tradition who are carrying this knowledge. Brahma, Shri Brahma Rudra Sanaka Vaishnava Shitipavana. Sorry, Shri Brahma Rudra Sanaka Hivaya Padme Yata Smrita. So this is the Padma Puran. In the Padma Puran, it's given very clearly. And there's another verse, Shri Brahma Rudra Sanaka Vaishnava Shiti Pavana. So the founders of the 4 sampradayas are Shri Lakshmi Devi, Brahma, Rudra, who is Lord Shiva, and the 4 Kumaras, headed by Shanaka Rishi. 4. They all practically come, but then after that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. So we have to understand that right question, go to the right authority. And then once we've gone to the right authority, what is the final point of this verse that Uddhava is talking about, right? What is the final point of this verse? If you think us competent to receive it. So he's asked the right question, he's gone to the right authority, but is he prepared to receive the knowledge? You know, it's said that you can take, if you have beautiful fertile earth, but you try and plant a plastic seed, will a tree come out of it? It's plastic. The soil is perfect. The plastic seed, it won't bloom into anything. But equally, if you take a beautifully nurtured organic seed and you try and plant it into asphalt, you try to plant it into tarmac, you try and plant it into concrete, will it take root? Absolutely not. Nothing wrong with the seed, but everything wrong with the soil. So you consider the genuine guru is like the organic seed, but the genuine disciple is like the organic earth. We need both that organic seed, that seed which is coming through, fruit. It's actually described in Chaitanya Charitamrita as a ripe mango, which has been carefully passed down. That seed of that mango needs to be implanted in the heart. So a beautiful tree with many more seeds can come out and bloom within our hearts, but we must be ripe. So what constitutes a ripe disciple, a worthy of the answer that Uddhava is asking about? So Krishna, and I would request everyone to have a look at this in Bhagavad Gita. This motif is mentioned again and again. 1864, 1865. Krishna is saying, because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit. 1865. Always manmana bhava mad bhakto. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. Become the Lord's friend. Become attached to the Lord. Make the Lord, reestablish that loving relationship with the Lord. Then your heart will become ready to receive it. How do you become the friend of the Lord? How do you become ready for the Lord to impart his instruction into your heart, either directly or through his bona fide representative? That answer is given in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, 29th verse. I envy no one, the Lord is saying, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. The Lord is saying, if you become my devotee, I can give you that knowledge. If you become my friend, I can give you that knowledge. How to become my friend? Render service. Render service. And what service can we render? What is the highest service that we can render? Well, that that, my friends, my dear friends of Krishna, the highest service, right, is given in the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'll tell you it right now. 18th chapter, 68th verse. For one who explains that supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. And at the end, he will come back to me. So if you are giving the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, it gives you the secret of how to give the topmost service. Talk to people about Krishna. Talk to people about God. Talk to people about their purpose. Use the Vedic wisdom to talk to them. Don't force them. Just get them to think about it for themselves. We're not here to impose people and put them into a certain category and force them to behave in a certain way and suspend their own intelligence. No, we're telling you, use your intelligence. Ask the important questions in life. Unlock the happiness which is within you, because it will be to your benefit. You will be a greater contribution to society. You can help others become a greater contribution to society. You will thrive. Society will thrive. And as society thrives, more individuals will thrive. And as more individuals will thrive, society will thrive more. And it will be like an upward propeller. We'll have more to give. Society will be able to give us more. And then we'll have more to give back to society. And society in general will be able to give us more. And we as a collective will uplift on the physical plane, on the mental plane, and most importantly of all, on the spiritual plane, on the eternal plane. Whereas at the moment, people are very individualistic. All they're doing is searching up the superficial. All they are thinking is it's a dog-eat-dog world. All that they are thinking is about their sense enjoyment. So what happens? They want to take. So society becomes a little bit more broken. And society can give you less. And so you become more individualistic and you think, okay, I've just got to take and fend for myself. And society becomes a bit more broken. And then we all become a little bit more individualistic and society becomes a bit more broken. And therefore we end up in this downward spiral, denigration of society. So if we are talking to people about their real purpose, talking about who Krishna is and why it is important for us to understand Krishna and also our spiritual identity, then, my friends, Krishna will see us as his dear friend. Then we will really and increasingly be able to understand who we are and who Krishna is. Of course, service is also based on sadhana. People say you get out what you put in. People who are, if you're trying to be physically healthy, if you're going to the gym and you spend all day eating crisps and chocolates and drinking fizzy drinks, and then you try and get into the gym and bench press that 100 kg or squat 200 kg, you're not going to get much out of it. Trust me, because your physical body is a reflection. You get out of your physical body what you put in. Equally, your consciousness, your psychology is very much the same. If you stay up all night binging on YouTube videos and Netflix and whatever, Amazon Prime, filling your consciousness with endless stream of mundane sound, stay up till 2, and you try and get up at 5 and chant some attentive japa. No, your consciousness is flooded with all of this mundane sound. Just like your physical body can become flooded with sugar and fatty foods, your consciousness can become flooded with all this mundane sound. And this flood of sound will stop the spiritual vibration and really be able to have its full effect. Srila Prabhupada talks about this as prayaschita, that in one sense you're trying to clean with the holy name, and then you're flooding it back in with the filth of mundane consciousness. It's like an elephant goes into the water, gets all clean. You may have seen this, especially those of you who've lived in Africa, if you've gone to Masai Mara or Serengeti. Cleans itself, comes out, and what's the first thing it does? It picks up the mud and the soil and flicks it all over its back. Straight after the bath. Clean, dirty again. Chant our japa, hit YouTube and just watch. Of course, if you're watching classes or something uplifting, that's something else. So that's how we can become a worthy reciprocant, become a friend of Krishna, render service unto Krishna. And how do we render real service unto Krishna? Best service we can do. The best service we can do is explain the supreme secret, this conversation, encourage people to think more deeply about their life, and also engage in our sadhana bhakti. So these are 3 points of that I found interesting in this verse. That ask the right questions, go to the right source, and become an eligible candidate. And then tremendous things can happen in our life individually, but also in society at large. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections from the wonderful devotees of Africa? And not just Africa, I can see we've got a couple here from London. Stunned silence.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hitesh Prabhu, please go ahead.
Okay, bro. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Well, the qualification of Arjun for being a nice student of Lord Krishna is like he was a friend and non-envious of Krishna. We also know that the import of the Vedas are revealed to those who have implicit faith on the spiritual master and the Lord. From my experience, what I've learned being a student of management, like if a subordinate is not strategically aligned with the vision, mission, and goal, with the direction, then he's not achieving the purpose of life, the purpose of his work. And if I analyze things from an academic point of view, like in school, in college, I was doing bearing in mathematics. So from Mauritius, if I take a direction of going towards UK, but if the bearing change even one slight degree, so I will not end up in UK, I will go towards France. So even our spiritual life is like this. Just the slightest, not listening to spiritual master, like deviation and all these things will change our direction. We might do a lot of tapasya, but if we are not listening, we are not strategically aligned as it is. Being an MBA student is not really a qualification, but having an MBA along with Das Anudas, in the mood of serving as a Das, this is the real qualification. Yes, like spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, we have many other pure devotees, but even we, as students, we need to be qualified to go back home. Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice class.
Beautiful point. Thank you so much, Hitesh Prabhu. I think, in your case, actually being 1 degree off and ending up in France, because I know you speak both English and French, probably wouldn't be so much of a problem for you. Parlez-vous français? Oui, oui?
Yes, yeah.
So there you go, bien sûr. So, but, joking aside, it's true. And that's why actually there's a verse, it's in the 4th chapter, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tatvadarshana. But actually there's 2 components, right? Service is the one that we talked about, but also like you said, pariprashnena and sevaya. Sevaya means service, but pariprashna means to inquire. If we don't ask the right questions, if we don't think intelligently, how can we get the right answers? We need to inquire and align ourselves, like you say, with the spiritual master in that way. We do, and it's a practical thing. And you're right, that comes from our side. We must always be evaluating and reevaluating. But that's why actually, and this was something I was talking to my wife about the other day. I think it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur who talks about the perfect association is of 3 types. Number 1, you've got your seniors. Number 2, you've got your peers. And number 3, you've got your juniors, right? You see, your seniors, you're deriving inspiration from. Your peers can evaluate you and you can evaluate them. And you collectively help each other stay on the straight and narrow. And your juniors encourage you to set the right example. And also in answering their questions, you can reaffirm your own ability to understand the philosophy. So we should have these 3 things. And in these 3 things, we can become perfectly aligned with the Guru's instruction. you know, because, okay, we can have a high standard up here, but if we don't have peer groups who we can, you know, swap notes with and speak to about, we don't necessarily know whether we're aligning ourselves properly. They can give us an alternative and can also give us encouragement and inspiration. And equally, the juniors, the peers can get into a groupism amongst themselves. But once they then have juniors who are younger than them, they start to take on additional responsibility. Because one day, that middle group, through the passage of time, will have to assume the mantle of the senior group once the others leave the planet. So that's why this is the perfect way. If we're going to align ourselves with the spiritual master, ask the questions, pariprashnena, and try and develop a situation where we have our seniors, our peers, and our juniors, if possible. Brilliant question, though, Prabhu. Really liked it. Thank you for your contribution, as always.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please can you accept my humble greetings as a good Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. I don't get the time often to follow your class, but today I'm really amazed at the way you are explaining. And also, you don't just focus on the verse as I do. You go out and you explain around, right? And the most important points you draw here is like a disciple should take a bona fide spiritual master. That should be like, both should be online. You know, we cannot say like, okay, if a stupid person come and ask a high question, which he himself doesn't understand, he had heard it somewhere, and he asks from the guru may give the perfect answer. That person won't understand anything. So the guru should be bona fide, and the guru, he is there to hold our hands and take us to Krishna. It's like an elevator, right? We don't go through karma, jnani, and yogi, and all these steps. We don't go. We may fall down. That's the stairs. Here is an elevator. We just hold. Prabhupada says that. They just hold my dhoti. I have got a Vaikunta's back door key. I can take you, right? So he says that. So if that is a guru's place, but the disciple also should be a perfect disciple, so that he knows he's in line with the guru. He listens to the guru, and then he walks in the path of the guru. That should be. So you explained very nicely about all these things. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji. I always love your contributions as well. In fact, I love everyone's contribution. And I hope that more and more people, we can turn this into more of a Sangha and start this as a discussion as well. It's interesting that you mentioned the term elevator. I was just reading about the yoga ladder again. That's always one of my favorite parts of the Bhagavad Gita. And obviously, progressing from karma kanda, karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and then ultimately bhakti yoga. And how by being a devotee, it is like an elevator. You don't have to go step by step up this ladder. You can just go up. But the thing about an elevator is that there's many stops on that elevator. You just have to make sure you know the right stop, the top stop, the last stop, Goloka Vrindavan, that's where we're going. Because the disciple, he may have the perfect elevator, the disciple, like you said, he has the responsibility not to jump off, come out too early. The guru will do a lot of the lifting, but we've still got a part to play in that. So I really appreciate that point. It's actually interesting, Srila Prabhupada once commented that many of his disciples, and this may come across as controversial, but they actually were aspiring for the heavenly planets and not for Goloka Vrindavan, because they were, anyway, this is not a comment on Srila Prabhupada's disciples, but something for us to reflect on. Sometimes we get into this idea of get hooked on piety, being a good person, being a dharmic person. This is all wonderful. But the ultimate goal is ahoitiki apritihata, unmotivated and uninterrupted service for the pleasure of Krishna. Ultimately, we've got to get beyond the level of piety, and we have to get onto the position of love. And for any of you who have been parents or been responsible for family members, or you will know that often you have to do things which you don't really benefit. It's a selfless service. You have to get up into the night, take care if the baby is crying, bring them into the room and settle them in comfort, and so many sacrifices, but you don't do it because there's an immediate reward for yourself. Okay, ultimately makes you feel good because you understand it's your dharma, but it is, sometimes it can be difficult, but you go through it because it's an expression of love. So in the same way, that elevator takes us to that position where it becomes love, which is totally unencumbered by some personal motivation. It's fully because Krishna is your full object of. Krishna and his associates and pleasing them is your only object of your desire. Whether it's inconvenient or convenient for you is a secondary matter. So thank you for that, Mataji. Beautiful point.
Yes, Prabhuji, also, you mentioned that some of Prabhupada's disciples wanted to just have the Jnana Yoga and they didn't want to go to Goloka Vrindavan. But one thing maybe they missed the point here, because Srila Prabhupada said, I think in chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said, sorry, in chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita, Samte Bhagva Sarva Loka Vishalam Shine Punya Mirtya Lokam Vishanti Evam Trayi Dharmam Anuprapanna Gata Gatam Kama Kama Labhante. What happens? Yes, they can go. Mostly the yogis, they go to the outer planetary system. But what happens? They have to come back. Shine Punya Mirtya Lokam Vishanti, they come back. So when they have thus enjoyed the lost heavenly sense pleasure, as a result of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So if we understand this bit that we have to come back here, we don't know in which body we are coming back in this material world. That's why we should aspire to get a bona fide spiritual master, and we should be a perfect disciple for the spiritual master.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Wonderful, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Oh, glory to Prabhupada. Thank you so much for today's session. It was so beautiful and wonderful. And I was just hoping my parents could just walk in and watch it together. But thank you so much. And the 3 points that you really mentioned, I was just seeing that the first one in asking the right questions, and here we are in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So at least we can see the right question in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are so fortunate. The second one is being in the bona fide session, and here we are in ISKCON, which is a very bona fide institution in the right path of God. Now the third one is just what we really need to work on. Are we really competent to understand this? And that's now our challenge as devotees. And so thank you so much. Yeah, as now that you're here, I would kindly want to request you. Her Grace Induleka Mataji had told us that she will not be available next Thursday. I was kindly requesting you whether you are available next Thursday. And then you can alternate with her for the same sangha.
So you'd like
to
come back? So you'd like me to come and do next week and then move back to that? Absolutely.
Yes, Prabhuji. Next week I am scheduled to speak on another platform, so I'm preparing for that, and it will be too much speaking. Back to back it will be. So please, if you can take for next week, and then I can do the following week.
Absolutely, Mataji. Thank you so much for filling in for last week as well. I apologize.
No problem. No problem. When I'm free, there's no problem.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
So should we end with Vaishnava Pranam?
I think because of
Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaya patitanam
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
His Grace KrishnaArjuna Das Prabhuji ki jai.
Ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hopefully I'll see you all next week.
Very much.
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the excellent class. Krishna. See you next week.